laugh so
Oh,
hard.
hello, people of the internet. I'm back. Oh boy, this is gonna be fun.
Who is it?
No, it's not gonna be fun. You're on.
Okay, people, we are going for 150,000 likes on this video, so smash that like button, hit the bell.
I am not authorized in any of this.
I can't. We're just gonna do some crazy stuff. I can't even look at the camera. I'm just looking at the screen.
You're just looking at the wall.
Okay, if we actually have any viewers, I would like you to leave the stream right now and find something better to do with your Saturday evening because this is not the right
tell
thing.
him that.
I want to come in here.
So this is my friend. We're gonna be doing some sick laser tag later. That's
we've got a new member.
So, welcome to the stream. Remember, smash that like button. 150,000 likes will give away nothing.
You're so cringy.
This isn't a YouTube video.
So
I
smash.
thought you said it was on YouTube.
Smash
It
that
is.
like button. Subscribe. Hit the bell.
Ethan.
What?
My phone just got a notification, I'm sure. Because I'm subscribed.
I just oofed on live stream.
Oh my gosh.
So smash that like button.
Touching me.
Hit the bell. Subscribe. We are gonna do this.
N57YT, smash that like button. Yes.
Go follow me on TikTok.
Sure.
Wait, there's actually people watching.
Look to your
Oh,
right.
actually, people watching?
Oh my God! Yes.
Random
I'm
person.
a
I don't know. Random person,
No one
help
really
me.
knows. No one really knows what the heck
Okay.
Save me.
Oh my
And donate to Team Trees.
Stop touching me.
Oh my God! You really need something better to do with your
Yes,
life, random
please
person.
help me.
Random person, you gotta
Get out of the camera.
Ow, my foot.
Oh my God.
Okay, this is our play doctor friend. God, random person.
Help
He
us.
knows who I am.
Yeah.
You just came over to host me. I'm sorry for your decision to host.
Thank you, random person.
I'm joking.
Oh my God!
I feel bad for you. If you decided to host me,
What's that?
bad choice
Wait,
on
what's
this
hosting
day.
me? What's hosting me?
Hosting is when another channel is starts basically like.
Guys, come in.
Hello.
We're live streaming, and there's actually someone watching us.
Yes, it's
Wow.
random person, one of my
And
most
with
dedicated
so much
viewers.
judgment.
Right.
He's one of my most
They
dedicated
must be
viewers.
So,
really trudging through
take
the
off that
depths of
frickin'
Twitch.
mask.
No,
Do they know what you look like, Ben?
no, they don't.
Oh, yeah.
Floss.
But Jordan's cool with it.
I am not Ben. I am some loser who needs a life.
Just wrote your address up
And a
on screen.
girlfriend.
And a girlfriend, as it was just pointed out to me. Close the freaking door.
You do not.
Live streaming to you from 8,000 feet. We've got Ben.
I need
They
help.
don't know where we live. Don't give it out.
There's like everywhere in the world that's 8,000 feet.
Stop
Yes,
touching my
that
head.
is true.
Oh my god.
So flexible.
Half
He's
the
so
world lives at
flexible, my
8,000 feet. I mean, no.
Oh my
We're trying to record
Come
here,
on, bring it on
people.
screen. Bring it on screen.
We're trying to record here. You know what?
Record what, Ben?
I don't know.
Random
Your
person.
channel is a mistake. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm subscribed. You're not wrong.
I'm a mistake.
Me too.
Okay.
I was intentional. Screw all of you.
Shut the frick up.
All right, off the green screen, please.
Random person,
Yeah,
if
curly
you are
hair, dude.
watching.
He is.
Yes, it is a mess. I agree. It's completely.
I don't understand anything.
We have never green screened before, so just
Yeah.
Ben
we've
has,
never-
I'm sure.
we've never live streamed before. He has.
I have.
None,
I have.
None
I
of the
have
rest
a-
of us have.
I have.
I'm
I
really
have.
sorry.
Screw you.
Aren't we
Stop
all
staring
mistakes?
at me.
Totally. Random person agreed. We are all mistakes.
Yes, I'm.
Wait, but have you seen the
No, come look at
Noobs
this.
Play
In
Minecraft?
the, come look at the chat.
Yes,
Come look at the
he's,
chat.
he's one
Random
of my
Have you-
most dedicated viewers.
Yes.
Have you
He's
seen the
good.
Noobs Play Minecraft one where Harry is
Smash
doesn't
that
know what
like
hentai
My
is?
parents won't let me.
Because
Ben,
I'm
what
the
he's
girl
got-
in that
Oh my
one.
god.
Oh yeah.
I realized
Yeah,
that the random person is
Fair.
literally named random person.
Oh my
You're
gosh.
just now noticing
And
that?
the Oscar for Captain Obvious goes to.
We're not even doing what we're supposed to be doing. We're just like having a good time.
Hello.
Hi. Hi, parent.
I am.
Are we
You're
all-
an idiot.
Are we- yes, that is.
We're
true.
live
Go away.
streaming.
Go away. Go away.
We're live.
Go away.
We're live streaming and there's like a green screen or something.
I know, but you gotta have like King Kong on the green screen.
I have to do that in
So
public.
many people.
That's
Yes.
actually a great idea.
Random person. We want a like for each of the people.
Oh my god, this is...
Smash that like
Oh
button.
my god, stop.
Okay, out of
You're
the
so
camera,
cringy.
out of the
Yeah,
camera.
can we just
That includes
put
you.
put on your shiny thing?
E.
All of Jesus' children move. You're on the wrong
Oh.
side.
Okay,
I
guys.
was
Oh,
pouncing
Ice
with my
Sleeper.
son.
Oh, Ice Sleeper. Hello,
need some
good to
air.
see you again.
Why is the door open?
Welcome to
Children.
Regret.
Trinity, is your sister?
Welcome to Regret.
I
I
know,
think she's in
children.
Jordan's
Let's
room.
play Truth or Dare. First person to donate $50 gets to tell us a dare.
No, that
Let's not.
anybody can ask a question.
Hey,
right now
welcome back.
because
This is
I
my
get a-
friend. So, we actually have someone watching. I can like you on YouTube.
There's
Please
two
do.
people on.
Please.
For God's
Oh my
sake.
God, we have another person watching.
That's random
Please,
person again.
Whatever you do, go watch the other
Thank you,
quality
Random.
content
What is
and not this
happening?
garbage
What?
stream.
Out of the camera.
Yeah,
We're
curly
trying
hair.
to do stuff
Go to
here.
Morgatron on YouTube.
What are
That's
you
why
trying
his
to
camera
do?
is
Did you
straight
have a
out.
plan going into this?
We
No.
did. We did. We had a plan and it
What
just.
was it? But then you ruined it.
There
It's all your
was
fault.
no
It was
plan.
our plan. Are you kidding? Seriously?
Say heck, that's a sin word.
Get
I
some
didn't
disco
say
music.
heck. Why is the door open? My hydro flask.
No, it's hot.
Oh, her hydro flasks.
I stubbed my toe on the hydro flask.
It's a thermal flask.
I'm sorry.
Hello, children,
It's a thermal
and
flask.
welcome back to Rusty Nail Review.
They can't see
Here we
it.
have,
Oh my god, this is so stupid.
here we have
Donkey
a,
Kong? It's
Donkey
fine
Kong, yeah,
Rusty
No,
that's,
Nail.
that's
it's
genius.
King Kong. It's King
Yeah.
Kong, not
This
Donkey
is
Kong.
indeed a very
We have
good-
no idea how to use this
It's
green
Donkey
screen.
Kong on the green
I
screen
don't know
and
about you
pretend he's
guys,
on
but-
rampage. Okay,
That's
out of the
really-
camera. We're getting too crowded.
No way.
Out of the
You're
camera.
gonna knock down the green screen.
Yes, we
Oh
don't
my
want
God.
the green screen knocked
Hefty
down.
price of-
Stop fighting. Go. Honey,
yeah.
if you're going to fight, fight. Outside. Go outside.
Fight on
Go
the-
outside, children.
Right,
Run.
here, I can take over our show from
Outside.
here.
This is a pretty nice nail.
Outside.
I don't know about you
Go
guys,
outside.
It's
You know what?
Right.
I'm going straight to hell.
We're gonna run a
I guess
history
this is
lesson
cool.
here.
This is a
Um,
pretty nice nail, guys.
The pyramids were built by aliens, and the moon landings were filmed and faked on the moon.
Yes. You all are so stupid.
Ow.
You can't even be seen.
Twitch
you know
is
that?
redder for watching.
God.
That's a good choice.
Oh my god.
That is a you problem and not a
So
me
annoying.
problem, random person.
What?
That is
It's
a
like-
you
it's
problem and
blurry.
not a me
It's
problem.
blurry.
like to
It's
need to
blurry.
put Donkey Kong on this.
What are
green
we
screen.
doing?
Pretend he's on a rampage.
I'm
Twitch
sorry,
is
random
better for
person, but
watching. I'm
we
moving
don't
now.
actually know how to use the green screen.
I do, but none of you really care.
But we can take
Wait,
this.
ignore that.
We do have this
Trying to
rusty
do.
nail, random
Excuse
person.
me.
We have a
Hello,
rusty nail.
hello, JC Zombie Guy. Welcome to our awful
JC,
stream.
Hi,
no.
zombie guy.
You're so
Zombie guy would
stupid.
like to buy a rusty nail.
Go away.
Okay,
It's $5 billion.
okay. There's one of us here who has actually live streamed before. The rest of us are clueless as what we're doing. Mainly me. She is just being weird. We had a plan coming into this. We do not have a plan
I
anymore.
can't see you.
Smash
Ben
that like
left.
button.
Ben
Smash
died.
that.
Ben's just Ben's back.
Smash
Hit the
that
thumbtack.
like button.
Ben's back.
Ben,
Hit the thumbtack.
Ben, can you just do like a screen cap of
This is so
just the rusty nail so that we can
Here,
go figure out what
hand me the nail for a second.
frick we're supposed to
Nail.
do?
Yes. You like my nails?
Nail.
Wait, why does it?
Okay, JC Zombie Guy, if you are still watching, smash that like button. We have no clue what we're
You
doing.
are so freaking cringy.
I've never live streamed before, okay?
Oh my god.
None of us
The
have.
fact
I
that
Actually, yes, I have.
I
Wait.
have, yeah.
Where'd they
I
go?
keep forgetting. Okay, never live stream with no way singing, dude. Oh god.
Right, we're going to do a history lesson.
Oh my god.
Out of the camera.
100, yeah, random person. Let's get 150 followers. What have I stepped into? Pain and suffering. If you are watching this, JC Zombie Guy, you need to leave and find something better to do with your Saturday.
No,
Now
don't
get
tell
out
him
of the
that.
camera.
Don't tell him that.
Out of the
Stuff
camera.
yourself on Halloween candy.
And
And perhaps
Don't.
get life-threatening diseases.
Can we do
off
some
the-
karaoke?
Get off of the.
Can we do some karaoke?
No.
That'd be copyright.
Chat, do you want some karaoke?
No.
That's
You
copyright.
can do improv
Wait,
comedy
we have
though.
3 people
Yeah!
watching.
Isn't this what this is, though?
We have
really
3
bad.
people
Really
watching.
bad. We're not even doing
We can
comedy.
play a freeze game where 2
Random
people
person.
have to do a skit, and at any point anyone else can say freeze and jump into the skit.
I
And
like
then
it.
from the positions
Oh, wait,
they're
I love
already in,
that.
they have to do a new skit.
Right.
And now
Anna,
we're
you
more
and me to
controlled.
start?
Oh, God, Jesus. Okay, cool.
Right, get out
Cool,
of here.
guys.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Off
come on in.
of the freaking.
Right.
Can we just do what we were
screen.
trying to do?
Off of
Ba-dum
the
ching,
green
yes.
screen.
Ba-dum-ching. Right. How
What
was
do
your
I have
school
to tell
day?
you guys to
Ow,
get off the green
again.
screen?
Jeffrey broke up with me, like, again, after, like, getting back together 6 times. It's been 6 times, and, like,
It's not recording.
It's on live.
We're not even recording.
We're live.
What?
We're live. That doesn't mean recording.
Oh. Well then.
No. Get
Yo,
off
stop.
the.
Oh, my God.
Hi, chart.
Oh my.
I really should use
Put the pickaxe down. It is very broken.
I know.
I like that idea.
What?
I like that idea.
Okay, you know what?
Well,
If
you
you're gonna
guys
keep messing
signed
around, you
my
have to
Okay,
get
I won't
out.
mess around. What do you want us to do?
I don't
The green
really
screen.
care as long as you don't touch my computer.
Okay, we won't touch the computer.
That's.
That's how we got his signature.
Yes,
Hey, what-
I stopped watching the streams for a month and this is what I see. This is not your normal content, guys. It will go back to whatever the frick he does.
Alright, children, remember,
You should have
we need
seen
to
last
do-
night's stream. That
we
was
need-
normal.
Gaming and it's good.
Remember, children, we were playing the improv game until you all
Oh, yeah.
were bad at
The
it.
improv game.
Right, the
guys.
improv game. Let's do this.
Remember.
All right,
Who
out of
was
the
I
camera,
dating?
all
Does
of
anyone
you.
know?
Right, going
All
out.
of you out of the camera, Anna further.
What?
Get
Doing?
back at.
You are all idiots.
Yes.
All of you
Joe!
up for
Now,
the
could
jump
you
to
tell me
kill.
something I don't?
Hey, man.
Dude, okay, how many times do I have to tell you not to touch the... Okay, excuse me for a moment. Alright, we're back.
Because it was quiet.
We're back, hello.
Oh, yes, we are indeed back.
Guys, I'm sorry for being a weirdo.
You
I feel like a
Don't be up
Jedi.
for
We're
the
all
kill.
heroes. Look at this. I'm wearing a plague doctor mask.
I'm a Jedi.
Because you're boring and
And the
Jedi.
fact that I haven't left is a sign that I'm a weirdo.
What?
I mean, that's true
Yeah.
of all of us.
All right, what do we want to do now?
Yes, chat. Give us some suggestions for what to do.
Yes.
Ah,
Oh,
yes.
You know what? That's a perfect idea. Suggestions, please.
Then I'll
For
be up
God's
for
sake.
the job. to
Karaoke
kill.
is definitely a good idea.
Wow.
But we
Then this
that's
man is
copyright.
offering to kill a guy for you. I don't
Kill
know.
each other.
I don't know if I would trust this
Please,
zombie
Sergeant.
guy if I were you.
JC, Team Stargate stays together, all right? We're gonna kill somebody on
Yo,
our show.
is that Obi-Wan?
No, it's Frodo. See,
You were Frodo. I knew it.
see, you
Wow.
can see it by the leaf
I
of Lorien
smell
here.
candles.
It's the leaf of Lorien.
Yes, I love that idea. We should sleep.
You'll
No,
get
we're
crazy.
already crazy.
Oh.
We've had
Buddy.
You can't all sleep in the same bed.
If we had access to drugs, this is
What?
what it would look like.
Oh my god.
Like-
What? You don't even want to know.
This is why I titled the stream "Help Me, Please." Please
Yeah.
help
For
Good
Jesus.
title of it.
Oh my god. Okay.
me. Okay.
Right.
God.
Hi.
Chat, we need
One
some
like is one
suggestions that
prayer.
are actually
All
good.
right. Excuse
I'm
me.
thinking karaoke might be a good idea.
No,
Can't-
we
we
can't
can't
do
do
karaoke.
karaoke.
Do you know what copyright is?
I
Just
can
get some
delete. I
Creative
can
Commons.
delete the stream, and
Just make some Creative Commons.
I can just
music.
delete the stream on YouTube.
No,
It's
just get
not
some
gonna
Creative
matter.
Commons music.
When in the lore does Frodo get a lightsaber? Nuclear bomb
So
on
true.
Ben's location in 5 minutes. Okay.
Please take me.
Alright.
Yeah, so Frodo got the lightsaber in, well, once he sailed across the sea, you see, he got the lightsaber from the elves. Apparently they're all hypercrystallite. Rusty Nail.
That's how that works, guys, right?
The Rusty Nail show is his show.
Okay, let's start with the Rusty Nail.
With
Right.
Ethan.
Wait, why are we
Ladies-
kicking it off with the Rusty Nail
I
show?
got an idea.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be starting with the Rusty Nail show by Ethan, starting in 5, 4,
Five,
3, 2,
2,
1,
1.
begin.
Just
So,
wait, it's not recording.
Oh, come on.
And you might want to
Sorry.
show it to the camera.
I want to do stand-up
Okay.
comedy.
Camera's
I got
up
some good
here.
Jokes. Do you have a marker, Ben? Ben, do you have a marker?
What should I do?
Do you have a
I
marker?
don't know. We'll see what happens.
I want to make
The thing with live streaming is just go for it because it's like real people.
Nobody's ever going to know who we are.
No.
I mean,
This
Well,
is gonna-
unless I do something later in life, so screw all of you, I will.
they're recording.
So, well, what's the
They
show?
can't
Welcome
see
to the
it.
Rusty Nail show.
We don't have any new Rusty Nails.
You might want to
This
go
is
left
kind
a
of,
little. I mean right.
Right
supposed to-
Yeah, go right a little.
to the right.
You're off till.
Okay, bye.
No,
I'm making me do this.
your other right.
Alright, so, I have a Rusty Nail, and, the bits kind of run out at this point, but, like, we're still going, so, I guess I just keep building the Rusty Nail, and talking about the...
It's a train tie. Oh, I've got
So explain to us what Rust is. Yes, please.
I've got. Oh, Rust.
You
No,
see,
get out. This is his
Rust.
show.
Rust is what happens when you combine
Rust.
FO2 with FE.
Rust.
Chemistry.
You mean FQ?
Rust is what happens when iron, everybody's favorite metal, iron, when it comes in contact with air or water, it goes like, yum yum, I love me some oxygen. And then it eats the oxygen, but then it gets full and turns red and starts to die because oxygen bad, don't eat oxygen.
Ben, I spawned a BB gun on your
Bed that has the
bed
power
that
of
has
a
the power of a
meteorite.
meteorite.
Okay.
1 minute till nuke comes. That was like 2 minutes
Iron
ago.
is everybody.
Thank God.
Oh,
Oh.
Jeremy, you're here now. Sweet.
Welcome, Jeremy.
Welcome to
yeah,
the club.
Jeremy.
You're just in time for me to
Continue the Rusty Nail show.
continue doing the Rusty Nail show till somebody else comes up with
I
an
have an idea.
What's the
I
idea?
have a
If
freaking
it's
idea.
karaoke,
It's
I
not.
will beat you.
It's not.
What
We
is
are
it?
not doing karaoke.
Better not be karaoke.
Give me an idea.
We could, if we want to, we can do
So,
the improv again.
I have a
Yeah,
joke.
yeah,
I have a
you
joke.
do.
I want to tell a joke.
Okay, we have some comedy coming up.
Now explain
Improvised
how
comedy.
hydrogen chloride dissolves zinc.
One
Okay, I actually know this one. I actually
Okay,
know this one.
out of the
So,
camera.
Chemistry fun fact show.
I am really good at
Out of
chemistry.
the
I am in
camera.
chemistry. So, hydrogen chloride is
Right.
hydrochloric
Come
acid,
on,
right?
Come
So,
on. You need to go
hydrochloric
right
acid is a
further.
really
You need to go right further.
Okay, sorry. Hydrochloric acid is
Little further.
the reason Ben is having more followers is because of this. Yes, JC Zombie Guy. Right. So, hydrochloric acid is
I said right.
Keep going!
There you go.
hydrochloric acid would dissolve the zinc because it forms a chemical compound that. Okay, so the hydrogen.
Didn't know this was a jump scare stream.
Shut up. All right, let's see.
Okay, hold on.
Follow.
Let the
The reason
child
Ben is
explain
having more
hydrochloric
followers is
acid.
because this. Follow chemistry, bro. Shut up, boomer.
Okay, just your average 5th grade nerd who doesn't know what life is.
That man just called you a boomer.
I don't give a frick.
Good job, JC. Good
Right.
job.
So, hydrochloric acid creates a chemical compound with the zinc, and it releases either the hydrogen or the chloride. I don't
don't need
remember.
to keep
It's been
answering this.
a long
I don't
weekend.
want to go back to
And
chemistry
it
class.
creates a gas and also dissolves the zinc into a liquid.
Stop shooting the gun.
And there you go for Frodo Gives Chemistry.
Okay, go away.
All right, off camera.
Christ.
Off camera, all of you.
I'm already
Okay.
Ah.
All right. Who wants to go next?
We were
Okay,
gonna do.
you're up.
Okay, guys.
No.
I said
Frodo,
off camera.
Frodo, go away. Go away,
Off
Frodo.
camera.
Frodo's going away.
Frodo.
To the right. Come on.
I'm really glad this
Come
is
on.
on
There you
camera.
go.
What's
I
your-
would be on a government watch list if this is on camera.
I don't like everybody here,
I have-
including Ben.
Well,
Wow.
then don't watch the friggin' stream.
Yeah, why are you here?
Releases hydrogen and makes zinc chloride, if I remember correctly.
Yes, that is accurate, I believe.
Did you say chemistry class?
Chemistry class? That's what you said. Okay, I have jokes.
Oh,
They're
go.
good jokes.
Okay,
actually,
yeah, they're actually good.
Or they might be crap jokes. It
You're a
depends.
crap joke.
Yes, I am.
I know.
My life is a crap joke.
Okay.
Tell me the comedy.
Oh, to the right. Come on.
To
Roll
the
for
right,
there you
to
go.
the right, to the
Oh,
right, to
okay,
the right.
there.
Now kick, now kick, now kick.
Anna, how did
Okay.
the camera?
No. Okay. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know.
What's that saying?
Bruno! I don't know what your name is anymore.
You'd be
Bro,
calling my sister a
Bro.
boomer 50 times over.
Oh my god, I have jokes like.
Right, continue.
Okay.
Jokes.
Shut up! Okay, so there was this lady that's walking into a shoe shop, and I don't know what I'm doing. And she's looking for a pair of crocodile boots. What are you doing?
Don't
What
break
are
it.
you doing? Don't do that. She walks into a shoe shop looking for crocodile boots, and so she finds a pair, and she goes up to the manager, and she asks, "How much are they?" And they're like, 1,000. Who knows how much? $50.
Black.
They're money. They're a lot of money, and she
Ben, can you come here? I have a thought.
oh my god. And she's like, that's like way too high, and
Where did Anna go?
and that's like way too, yeah, too much money. I suck.
Más
at this.
dinero.
Shut up!
That es español.
I hate it. Does this work? Would this work? Nothing
Like
works.
say
Nothing works at this point. Stop it! Can I just tell my freaking joke?
Yes. Tell your friend joke.
Thank
Can
you.
tell a joke?
I've been trying to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, boomer.
Yeah. They agree with me. I think. I don't know. They said yeah, so I
Did you
just.
that you're a boomer or that you?
Oh my god, no!
Okay.
What are you doing?
Just.
I'm
I
going.
thought that was someone else.
Okay, just talk.
Okay. Is this English class? Yeah, it probably is. I don't know. I spin.
I have a good thing next.
French class. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Just stream.
Okay.
Be a streamer.
No, she's not.
Okay.
She clearly doesn't know how to.
Well,
None
it's
of us
it's
do.
it's kind of like
This is so fun.
I feel like
You
I'm
don't know
I,
how to stream.
I feel like I'm in front of like my whole class. I feel like
You're in front of a live studio
yeah,
audience. That's much
that's
worse.
what I mean. That's what I mean.
That's
Right,
much
ladies
worse.
and gentlemen, if you haven't already, smash that like button. I had to.
You suck. Yeah, please kill him. Don't kill me. Yeah, kill him.
Smash that like button. Go ahead. Okay.
Hey, Pogger. Yeah. Stick the
What is life? No one knows. We are in a living hell. So.
Whoa, you're not allowed to say that on Twitch.
As long as she's talking about the place, we're good.
Yeah.
Ah,
That's what I mean.
indeed.
Yeah.
All right, you keep telling your weird jokes and
Yeah.
stuff. I'm gonna go
Whoa,
get water.
hi Satan. How are you doing, old buddy?
Stop it.
Sure is good down here.
Wait, is Anna here?
No, she left. She's
Well, Anna's Satan, so.
Anna's MIA. She went downstairs, I believe.
Nope, I'm going down there, so I'll check.
Okay.
Bring her back up
go
if you
back
see her.
to nail show. I'm
You know what,
enjoying
let's
nail
just
No,
show.
okay.
around,
Can
like-
I please do a really quick one?
Okay.
Right.
You already did your class. I'm getting
Yeah,
it
Jeremy, I know
I'm not
we're
even
all
gonna
laughing.
do
No,
it.
this is good. This is actually better. Okay,
Uh,
yeah, I
okay,
know her
wait.
jokes are crap, but ours.
I
was
didn't
funny.
even get to tell it.
Right.
Shit.
Is this math or science? I don't know. What is life?
Right.
Life is a joke. I'm laughing right now.
Welcome to a
Not
job.
because of her jokes, but because of all of this. Shut up, Boomer. Wow.
Thanks.
I agree, JC.
JC, don't be an internet jerk.
Too
Um,
late.
Whoa. Whoa. Stop
I'll be
right
back.
there. This
So-
is the Twitch police. Wee woo, wee woo, wee woo. I'm sorry. Are you verbally abusing that chat member? I'm going to have to behead you for that
No,
one.
I'm talking to Ben. I'm talking to Ben, who has just left the room,
Alrighty.
leaving me. What are you doing?
I don't know.
You get
Right.
Comedy.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, I'm Professor Snape.
Snape.
right.
Severus Snape.
Nope,
Dumbledore.
nope. Stop it. Go.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen,
Balcony of
right
shame.
now we are going to be
Balcony
talking
of
about the
shame.
humble Lego brick. Now, Legos were invented in Denmark, and this is kind of the most common Lego brick. Now, Lego actually filed for a patent. Oh God.
Frames being dropped. Wait. Okay, we're back.
Right.
All
Sorry
right.
about that weird disturbance. Something just happened on our computer. We have no idea what. Because Ben's gone and we're clueless. Dumbledore.
We do not know
Someone
what
put a Dumbledore in the chat. Or apparently live streaming or something.
Okay.
To Ben's two friends.
Okay.
Have a nice night.
Have a nice night.
Right.
I'm closing the door.
Right. Ladies and gentlemen, the humble Lego brick. So, Lego actually filed for a patent on dozens of different types of bricks.
Boring.
Frickin'
I don't want
Lego filed for a patent on dozens of bricks, so even if they they just got the patent on it, so even if they didn't use all of them, their competitors couldn't use them for...
You just broke the Lego.
You can't break a Lego.
I've
I mean,
actually
like,
managed to
Actually, you
break one.
can. My sister.
Yeah, I've
does
actually done it once before.
My sister eats them.
That's not
She
okay.
like literally chews them and then snaps them in half. And I'm like, what are you doing? Are you gonna eat it? Are you gonna swallow it? You're gonna die.
I can't take me serious either.
okay.
Jeremy has nitro. I can't take me serious.
I'm high on air. We all are.
Right, we have 6 people viewing the stream. That is not enough for us to get our goal of 150,000 likes. So tell your friends, smash that.
Please stop it.
No, you're gonna not.
Alright,
I'm back.
children, I'm back. Okay, so here we have.
I mean,
nail
I ate
show.
crayons as a kid, but never Lego.
You ate crayons.
Welcome
People
back
do
to
that
the nail show. Here we have
It's not even a nail.
pick a nut.
That's not a nail.
That's not a nail.
They can't even see it.
Take it out of the box.
No,
Pick
wait.
a nut. No, these are nails, and you are going to hurt yourself
You are all.
because you're a Dumbo.
You are all.
These are pick a nut finishing nails.
I know what my next.
Pick a
Uh,
nut.
I can only presume for finishing
Oh
off
my
your enemies and stabbing through their eyes.
Oh my gosh.
We've actually got 6 people
Now,
watching.
caution! I want to warn you. There
We've
is
got what
caution on
watching?
these.
6 people.
Wear safety glasses.
4.
And don't be a
Said
dum
6 a
dum.
minute ago. Oh, we've
Now-
lost 2 people.
Now,
What is your favorite flavor of crayon? NA.
now, if you have, if you take a closer look at these are pretty small nails. They're about 2 inches in length. I'd say a couple millimeters in diameter.
Or part of an inch, like probably an eighth of an inch for those of you in the Americas, which is not us.
I don't know what I'm doing.
The face
Anyways.
of Ben. What are you talking about? The face of Ben.
The face of Ben. That's not.
I am humbled by you
Also,
calling
hello,
me that.
James. How are
So,
you? Hello,
we have-
other James. Sorry.
How many Jameses are
There's 2. There's the actual
Hey,
James
watch your
and then there's
language in the
other
chat. Jamie's having a bro moment.
So, yeah.
Wow, you
I-
James,
these
what-
are- are pretty nice nails. Obviously pretty tiny. There's not much you could
You're just
hold up
looking
with
at
them.
his hand.
Yeah,
Without-
I'm learning the
Just
blade
look at his
doctor.
hand. Don't even pay attention
Like
to the
you need a bit of a
actual nail.
thicker nail if you wanted something heavier.
Hey, put the pickaxe
But
down.
these should be good for like most hanging
That
of like
thing is very
paintings and
fragile,
stuff.
right?
You might need
Now,
2 for a larger painting.
This one comes with about
well, how's it many
lot
does it say on
of
the box?
nail.
How many does it say on the box, you weirdo?
How did we need it? 1 pound. 1 pound of nails.
Wow,
Wow.
that's fancy.
That's a lot of nails.
That's precise. 2 inch. They're 2 inches long.
That's what I said.
I'm sorry.
Right. Can I please get back on this? I have a new
All
show.
right, nail show's over now.
Right. Welcome to the NASA show. Bum bum ba-dum, bum bum. NASA. Right. Today we're going to be talking about the space shuttle. Now the space shuttle was used for about 40 years by NASA in over 100 missions. God, shut up. I'm not a freaking boomer.
This doesn't even have
Right.
like the other
So
side.
the
to
space shuttle was used
Yeah, it broke.
40 years by NASA. It had a nice cargo bay and room for 7 to 8 people, depending on what their mission required. Now, it was launched on a big tank with 2 side rocket boosters that tell us about Mars and why it may be difficult to live there. Okay, I can do that. That's more interesting than space shuttles because everybody knows that. God, I wish.
I can't breathe.
You weren't ready for that, were you?
Okay, so
Uh,
tell us about Mars. Random person, I will do your request. Mars would be a very difficult place to live. The main one is for.
I have a rock.
I want nails, not NASA.
Nails are better. We all love nails.
Please stab me. Right.
Where
So.
are they?
Gladly.
Ow, god
Wait,
dang it.
where
that
are
hurt.
the nails?
Um,
Oh, there they are. I'll be
so,
substitute for nails.
NASA takes 7, or it takes about 7. Random, you literally just asked for this. It takes about 8 to 20
I'll take
minutes.
the tie.
Ben, get him off.
Okay,
Um,
give me the tie, please, or I will gladly stab you.
So it takes about 8 to 10 minutes to get back and forth from NASA, or from NASA to
You just hit my
Mars.
water bottle.
I don't
Prepare
like
to
friends.
I
die!
didn't hit it. I can't.
No, it's a plague doctor
No.
mask, random person. It's what
Yeah.
Ben wears to
I am a
Keep
plague
his
doctor,
anonymous.
screw you!
It's not Darth Vader. Good lord. So
I was Darth Vader
the
one
nail-
year, but now I've got a
the nail show guy has left. He's off
I don't
doing
know.
something.
He
We're not
probably is
sure what.
drinking water. I
Probably
don't know.
drinking water. Sure.
Probably drinking water.
Can somebody go
Stop
get me a
trying to
drink of
kill
water?
me.
I'm like dying.
No.
Well, go get it yourself, and no water's
Yeah.
allowed
Right.
up here. As
So-
long as it has a cap on it, you're good.
It's water. What's
Alright.
What's that?
Ben, do a face reveal. I'll tell you what. We get 150,000 likes. Ben will do a face reveal.
That's YouTube! Okay,
There's still people watching.
Ben giving off, boomers, hi, Ben's sister. That's not my sister, that's my sister's friend, Trinity.
I'm her best friend. Excuse me. I've known her ever since we were
I think
born.
they might
Would
be
you
talking
like
about
to
me.
die?
I think they might be talking about me, actually.
Jordan would kill me.
They're talking about
Oh
you,
my
yeah.
God.
Alright, let's see. Let's see, what's Chad saying? Alright.
Face
Yo, is that Darth
reveal.
Vader? No, Ben delete. I will delete this. Ben do a face reveal. No, not yet.
150,000 likes. He's doing a face
I
reveal.
have,
guys.
no. I said at 500 followers I would do one, but I'm not 100% sure about that, so.
Go follow me on Instagram.
Everybody lies on the internet, people.
Face reveal.
Oh boy.
A face
I lied.
reveal. Yes, face reveal. Okay, shut up, boomer. You need some milk.
Do you
You
need some milk?
You need some milk.
I don't want milk.
You need
No.
milk.
I want a cow.
All right, we're good. All right. Oh yeah, welcome to the chaos of my life currently. Ben, stop.
Okay, Ben is
Do you
dying.
guys really take me as some type of psychopath? Because if so, anyways, yeah, it's called clickbait.
Yeah, I gotta do that. Okay.
Yes.
Ben, we have an idea for a good show. She's in on it.
What is it?
Just move over.
What is it? That is an absolute. Nobody wants to watch that. I just smacked my mic.
And the Oscar for 2019.
2018.
The 2019 Oscar
2035,
award goes
this is
to
what we're doing with
Ben. All right, let's go figure out an idea for a show. Come on.
I wanted to break your hair.
What a beautiful, yes, you are. What a beautiful mess. This is horrible. This is more horrible. Alright, let me get all the lightsabers.
Wait,
Oh, we're getting lightsabers?
We're getting lightsabers?
No, you're not getting lightsabers.
Right, we're gonna do a show where
No,
she
you're
braids
not.
my hair.
No, you.
Do you guys want to see that, chat? You want to see that, chat?
I will gladly get the lightsaber again.
This is my pet rock.
You guys are going to rip down the green screen again. I can feel it. Alright. Is Vincent here? What is love? Vincent is not here. And
Come
what
in.
is love?
We
I
know.
can't tell you. I've never had love.
No.
Alright. Oh, it's hard to breathe in this thing.
We need help!
Screw off!
Wait. Do you guys want to see me braid his hair?
Yeah, chat. Give us.
I want to braid his hair. Let me braid his hair. Let me try and braid his hair.
If someone says
I want to braid his hair.
Yes!
Yes!
Oh, we got yeses in the chat.
Oh,
Um,
God.
Braid his hair.
They
Yes.
want my hair braided. That's great.
No,
I
Jeremy
can't- I
has
don't think-
nitro. I will not shout you out, Jeremy. Jeremy has nitro. You are not getting a shout out.
You just did.
I
Yeah,
know.
you just did.
Right.
Okay, I
we are
have-
going to braid my hair.
Okay.
Let me get a chair.
Yeah, get a chair.
Here's a good chair. Ooh.
I don't know why I
Oh
just
God, why did I sign up for this screen?
You agreed
No,
to
I'm
this.
not.
No.
No, I'm noping.
I wanted to braid
There,
your
you know
hair.
what? We're just putting the chat in front of us. Hello. We can't see ourselves anymore. You know what? In
That's
fact,
probably a good thing.
Yeah.
moving camera so you can see my direct face. How does that sound?
You don't
Do
have
it.
a
Do
face.
it. He wants to. They want you to do it.
Gingerbread cook.
Alright.
I want to braid your hair. They agreed that I should braid your hair. I want to braid
Oh,
your
I
hair.
disagree.
I want to braid your hair. You agreed with it in the first place.
There, that should be good enough. Although,
What the hell? Ow! I've been gone for a good amount of time, but what?
don't ask.
I just see holes.
It kind of all went. It kind of all went to badness.
Nail guy is back. Guys, the nail
Well,
guy.
you can't say
The nail guy is back. Come
Yes.
here, nail guy.
We have a
Nail
new
guy.
edition of the Nail Show coming up in 3
let's
minutes.
Do this. Let's
I don't
do
have
this
any other
braiding
nails.
drill.
What do you want?
Here,
Back
We're gonna do a braiding show.
No,
we are
put
going
this
to do the
back.
braiding. We're going to do the
Put
braiding.
this back.
On whose hair? Not mine.
It was,
Okay.
it was
Oh,
already
thank
there.
God. I
We're
can't braid
braiding-
your hair.
I will braid yours.
Okay.
Move.
No.
Move. We're gonna braid. We're gonna braid her hair.
Ooh.
Okay.
I don't like people touching my hair.
It's okay. I will be lightweight.
Anna, sit down.
Do you know?
Right, chat. Can you see us?
He left.
Can you see us?
Yeah, they can.
Hey, what are you doing in my
Pretty
closet?
gay.
Where is that?
Why is someone's thing pretty gay?
People, if you can see
Why
us.
is pretty gay?
Okay.
I don't think that's related to the chat.
No, it's not. It's not. It's completely different.
There's a monster behind the curtains. Okay, do you even know how to braid?
No.
No, the chat's right there.
Yeah, we know.
Do you know how to braid?
Yes, I know how to braid. Okay, everybody, watch. Ready?
I don't let people touch my hair. You are lucky I am doing this for the internet.
You don't have to do it.
Not even.
It's too late. I think it's too late. They have my hair.
Right,
Oh,
here.
Jesus.
Better idea.
stop
Do you have a
touching-
hairband? Do you have a hairband?
Let's, Woo,
I do.
yes,
Do you have a hairband?
You
Give me a hairband.
actually have a hair.
Hairband.
fingernails,
Jokes.
yes.
That's two.
This is the opposite of ASMR.
This is the.
What's that?
This is
I don't
visual
know.
ASMR.
This is visual art.
Making you uncomfortable.
Are you collecting this time?
Reese does hairstyling. Hi, interwebs.
You like?
Oh, please don't do something stupid. Oh, Jesus.
Do you
No,
like
I'm not.
like
I'm not. I'm
bangs?
not.
Yeah.
Trust me.
I don't.
You
I
don't.
see a giant knot in my.
That's
This
not.
is your
Okay,
hair.
no.
It's
let
done.
Me do this. No, you.
It's
let me do
gorgeous.
this.
It's
You don't
gorgeous.
freaking know how to do this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wait,
Okay.
wait a
It's
second.
okay. It's okay.
God, we need something
Excuse
better
me.
to do
Off-
with our evening.
Off the green
For
screen.
God's sakes, help
You
me.
don't.
Off the
You
green
told me that you knew how to
screen.
braid. You don't know how to do a
Trinity.
freaking bunny.
No, I know how to braid.
Then
I
why
just-
didn't you do it?
Because her hair is crappy.
Your hair is
Dare you, boo! How dare you, boo! How dare you, boo! No violence,
No,
no violence,
be
no
careful,
violence,
be
no violence.
careful. You're going to rip the green screen like he did.
But I didn't. Why? Because I am conscious of my decisions.
No, you're. Well, yeah.
Shut up.
Off the green screen,
Where's my
please.
hair?
She's almost killed me. She
What you
has.
put on your arm?
Off the green screen.
Okay, we are off.
That includes both of you.
They want Mr. Nails.
Off the green
Hey,
screen,
oh my
please.
god.
Reese,
Yes?
we're gonna bail soon.
Thank god.
Thank God. We want Nails Man. They want Nails Man.
Oh, nails, man!
What, nails, man? Oh
They
no.
want Nails.
We don't have any more nails. Bye,
Oh,
stream!
Jesus. Oof.
Oh, wait, my candy bag. Move.
That would have been fun for me. That would have been fun for me.
Hello, chat.
Thank you, Streamland.
Oh Jesus.
That was horrible.
They want nails.
Welcome to the horrific
Everyone
show.
chant. Yes.
Fingernails.
Yeah, do nails. Do
They
nails.
want
Nails.
fingernails.
They want finger. Here's a fingernail. Here you go.
Ben changed into.
I have gross.
Oh, that's uncomfortable.
Yeah, I know.
I have long nails, which
No.
isn't fitting for who I am, but you know what?
Leave
me alone.
Ben changed into green shirt.
They demand
I should have
won't
shorter
work.
nails for my
Random
life.
person. He wants the nail show so
Yes,
bad.
he wants the fingernails.
I don't
Fingernails.
know.
Fingernails.
See, I have
Mimi?
fingernails.
I need someone?
You get back. You get that close to my mic again, and you're going to. I just realized you are all listening to us through my headset.
Oh,
Oh my
that
god.
might be a small problem.
That might be a small problem.
Hold on.
How do we sound? Good, I hope?
Oh my
Properties. Default. Let's go. The kill microphone. There. Now you can hear us better. Hopefully.
Oh.
Can you still hear us?
Hopefully you're not wearing headphones.
I'm just doing what I'm told. What are you told?
Right, children.
Not
How
good.
long before this degrades into subservient
I
children?
don't
Just say you
know.
eat children.
Did you hear it better with the other microphone?
What?
Did you just say you
Sounds
eat
fine.
children?
No, I was
Fine.
wondering how long it takes before this degrades into subservient chicken. Not eating children.
What?
What the heck is wrong with you?
Boo.
What is wrong?
Boo.
Okay, I'm leaving.
Boo.
I can't tell if it's better or worse.
Boo.
They want fingernails.
These
Go.
aren't real glasses. These are for my Halloween costume, just so that everyone knows I'm not blind.
I wear actual glasses.
I need-
I want everyone to
I
know.
need this stool if we're gonna do
Ben has to,
nail
because
show.
he's blind.
I'm not.
That's so mean. You
Welcome to chaos at its finest.
And I am your host, Satan.
Please.
I just realized the sound seems to be off from the audio. Well,
Do
it
you
might be.
even-
They
Is
want,
it?
I don't know.
They want nail man.
It might be.
Please tell me you capped it properly so that
Nail
all these screams
man.
aren't just
They want
running
nail
straight
Yeah,
through.
I
just
don't
judging
think so.
from
It
everyone.
just doesn't
Oh,
look like
God,
it's
no.
working.
Everyone
well.
keep chanting nail man or something.
Hold
like
on, you know what?
Interesting.
Put your glasses on.
Nail man. Oh.
You know what? Excuse me for a moment.
No,
I'm
not the
turning.
camera.
Yes, the camera. You know what? In
Oh.
fact,
Weak ears.
It's okay, we can do nail ASMR.
Good.
there you go. We're back.
Do you hear the nails?
Regrets.
Can you feel it in your soul?
Nail ASMR.
Ben, show your real face. This is Ben's real face. How dare you insult him?
Yeah,
God.
he's just a nice bird man.
I'm just a plague doctor.
Our baby's
Baby's
dishwasher
dishwasher
safe.
safe. I
no.
tried. They're not.
Fun fact, no. They are not.
Yes. Just sure that they're. That's not in
No,
fact.
they,
Hey.
they are not.
Safe.
I have learned from
I've tried.
experience. I'm just kidding. I have not learned from experience. Oh God, I have something wrong.
I
Don't
tried
me!
dishwasher as a baby.
I'm what's wrong with you. My
Dishwasher
influence.
cyborg
Yeah,
now.
probably. No, I'm just. I'm high on here.
You know what? I can
I'm
make
high
it
on
to follow
existence.
faces, guys. I can make it to follow faces.
Oh, please don't. Please don't. This was a mistake. It
I'll
just,
be
it
up
just
for the
isn't
gun.
stopping
I'll say
you.
all of them if you want. Maybe.
Oh god.
All right, there.
Oh, it's awful.
I'm gonna go put some dishes in the sink. Okay, you do that, Jeremy.
What?
Y'all want to see a dead body?
No.
No.
No, thank you.
I see.
No.
Actually,
no.
wait. Here's one for you. Here's okay.
Oh my
Okay.
god.
So
Hold
right
on.
here. Okay.
know what?
Move. Okay.
You don't have a
Play
head.
again.
Oh my god.
Play it. You're so
We were
tall.
supposed to be recording with the green screen. Now look at us in front of the. You know what? I'm just going to turn on face tracking for just to see who it follows.
Good job. He played dead.
Alright, well,
But again, but why did I?
Who does the camera like? Who is it favoring?
yeah, let's see in a moment.
You
There.
can't gargle sand.
Follow my
True.
feet.
I knew it!
This is kidding. This is, you can't gargles. What's the. Wait, you all want to see dishes?
Whoa,
I like the
whoa.
way your shirt doesn't fit. Don't fit. What's the difference between sand and menstrual blood? You can
Wait,
gargle,
you're not
you
allowed to
can't
say
gargle.
that.
I
Stop
don't know
reading
what-
chat.
I don't
Stop
know-
it.
I don't know what
It's-
that is. Because I don't really
You
care.
don't know what that
I don't
Jesus!
really.
So what's a month for women?
Hold on.
Oh my god.
Hold on, you know what?
It's a teaching moment.
I don't know how to delete it.
I can vibrate my ears. Ow, that feels weird.
Oh,
I know, right? Random person. He was here when it all began. And now he's just like, wow. Oh gosh. This is so bad.
Face.
Thank you for noticing, random person. Thank you for noticing.
Ben, why?
The answer is peer pressure. That's why. Don't give in to peer pressure, random person. Don't do it. It's not healthy.
That's so scary.
Also, these are fucking stupid. Wait, you're not allowed to sit on Twitch. Oh no.
He said freaking.
get out of here.
These are chicken
Oh.
screws. Uh huh.
Chicken.
That's what I said.
Chicken. Trucking screws.
I just took out.
Aw, what?
What?
What, you want to
that
see
on
my
purpose.
face?
Heck you, Ben. I
Oh,
can't
it's your
say.
fang.
I,
Oh my
I can,
God, I'm
I can
so
show my
scared.
face if you want,
Do?
but I'm not going to.
I can't say. What?
What?
Ooh.
Don't say that.
What?
Why?
Oh, I know exactly what he's trying to
Heck you,
say.
man. I can't say
You know,
it.
I'll say it for you right here.
Someone
Oh,
say it.
James.
Ben,
Ben
peer
peer
pressure.
pressured me to watching his stream. No, I didn't.
Does that mean I should leave?
Here's one of the results. I just love Can I have my pet named Steve?
Yeah, let's put
No, don't leave.
Minesweeper.
That does not mean you should leave.
Ben, you got any
That
sick
means you should
games for us to
stay.
play?
No, not in front of you all.
Oh.
Oh, I mean, I do have tons of games. Like, one of my favorites, SCPSL.
Oh my god, no.
Yes.
Wait, is that the one where it's the like
Secret
weird
laboratory.
MMO one or
No.
the actual one?
No, you're thinking.
That's the
Give
one
me
with this
mailman.
thing, right? It's got something like this. There's
Yeah,
something like this.
SCP 04. Oh, no, that. Are
Do
you,
you guys
are you
still want
referencing
Mailman?
173?
I don't know.
Do you guys still want
I know one exists.
There is the one
isn't it
SCP
called,
that's
like,
like a
Peanut or
doctor
something?
boy, and he's
Peanut.
like, ooh, I like
Peanut.
Zambos. Gotta love me some Zambos.
Do you guys still want Nailman? Say Nailman.
Everyone fight me in Roblox, I'll pwn you all.
Pum, 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 pum,
What?
I can't. I don't know what that
All right, who here regrets your life?
Alright, wait, where's...
No, no.
No, we're just gonna browse your Steam library.
What's that?
Clearly. Change
what?
it
We're
to...
trying to do stuff here, but
I am
we're
too,
supposed to
always
use
have
the
to- what?
green screen, but
My bro from
I can't speak.
my friend broke up with me. Why did I do that in an accent?
You should just put your hand in. Hold my hand.
I'm on Twickus
oh,
PT,
excuse me.
and it's
Sorry.
so much worse.
What?
Twick.
It's so much work. Oh.
I'm on Twitch. And oh my OMG, it's so much worse.
Mga.
There should
Mga.
be- there
Okay,
should be
we've
a
got
positive
5
review
viewers
for
on
that.
Twitch and 1 on YouTube. This is going great.
Is it though?
No, it's not.
Well then, why don't we just do an actual stream now?
Yeah.
You know?
The-
Sit back, drink some coffee, pretend none of this happened.
Are they
I
doing
will
a gummy
eradicate
sandwich
all
for
of
this?
you, including Ben.
No, you won't, zombie guy.
You wanted it a nail.
Also, that's cyberbullying.
Here's
I'll
a
have you
nail.
reported to the police
Here's
of
your
the United
rusty
States
nail
of
that you
America.
wanted.
You put it
I
back,
want you
please.
to know.
Why do you want nails so much? What? What's so interesting about nails? Actually, they are.
Could you tell
Have
me
you
the other
covered
lenses
your
on?
computer cameras? Because I promise you, they're watching. As in they mean me. What?
There you go,
Thank
Lazor.
you.
I'm surprised no one's asking for something outside of the
no.
screen.
Do you have any idea how much that's worth on eBay?
Yeah, put that back. Put that back. Put it back.
I will
That
put
you
it
see
back.
how close that is to falling off, right?
Isn't that the dance move, right? That's the dance move, right? What?
Keep the earth clean.
It isn't Uranus.
Oh, snap.
I
It's
love
pronounced
you,
Uranus, you
Jeremy
freaking
Hasselhoff.
plebeians.
Did Frodo die? Where is he? He left. He's gone.
Yeah,
Bye,
he's
boo.
very dead.
No one knows. Wait, where did he actually go?
He died.
left, he went home.
I told you, he's dead.
Does Frodo
Alright,
have
would
the
you
ring?
like to kill everybody?
Not yet.
About
Okay. JC, here you go. You can have the crossbow
that's a
from Nerf Rebel.
Another
My
dirty joke
sister's
from
gun.
Jeremy.
Does anyone have a black pen?
And why do you want a black pen?
Because
Why does it need to be black, you racist?
That's actually the joke.
No, it's not.
Oh, it's
no,
different
it's
joke?
close. No,
Right.
it's not. Maybe. I'm sorry.
Why? Because you're white making a.
You're welcome,
racist joke.
JC.
I
You're
like
welcome.
making. I like making jokes that aren't. They're in.
You know, we should just do a game show.
Yes!
Oh wait! I saw this YouTube channel. It's
I
like,
can host.
Oh yeah.
You can host. Maybe. Why did you...
But,
All in favor of me being host of the newest game show that we don't have a title for. Say aye!
You know what? It's going to be, you know what? We'll be back in a moment stream.
Yeah.
Indeed.
But do say aye if you
We'll be
know.
back.
That was a mistake.
All right.
Drugs, kids.
Wow. Actual life advice.
Alright, so this is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing scribble.io. So,
We're making a conscious effort to improve things here at
in fact, you know what? I have the Jackbox party pack.
Yeah, we should probably do that. That would be a better thing than
You're
this.
so loud.
I don't know what that means. I'm just sitting in a chair.
Okay,
Random
And I
person
promise
has
we won't
left
say any
us.
racial slurs,
Yes.
guys.
Random person was the only person that was watching the stream. Like, not to just call us boomers.
The only person seriously watching and then they left. Right, yeah. We won't say any racial slurs. You made a mistake. Say you're sorry.
I'm sorry.
Say it louder.
I'm sorry.
Okay. That's excessive.
I'm sorry.
You should stop saying sorry so much.
Sorry. It's a different person, but like you were doing.
That doesn't make any sense. Legos are not.
Not to be racist or anything, but I like Legos. I don't understand how that's racist,
Yeah, that's
so.
Not to be
I'm-
racist
I'm
or anything,
confused.
but Swedish people are cool.
Alright,
Not
Anna,
be racist,
here's,
but I like
here's the
cookies.
phone.
Cool,
Yes,
cool, cool,
oh,
cool,
of
cool.
course.
We should play a Kahoot.
Kahoot! I have a Kahoot.
I still got the air horn.
Oh God.
Is this attached to the internet? It is. Finally.
It's visual, man.
Alright, who, do you know
I
how
love
to phone?
Penny's back.
Do
A
you have a
13-year-old girl just
It's
invented a
downstairs.
more viable
Is
hyperloop
it
than
charged?
Elon Musk.
Yes.
What?
I suggest you go get it.
Why?
Because we're playing a game.
I can't play anything on it.
Alright, here,
I have this like.
get ready. Everybody get ready. We're going to do the Jackbox party pack.
Yay.
What does that mean?
What are we doing?
Here.
I don't know what's happening.
Game
I'm
play.
uncultured.
Welcome to gameplay. Wait, where's the webcam?
I don't know.
I know, but I know you said you're not being racist, but we don't understand why you're not being racist.
Yeah, we
or
don't
racist.
understand.
I don't understand.
We don't understand the joke.
I'm confused.
Why?
Keep pelting
Can
it
I
at
see
me.
it?
Webcam.
Can't see it.
Yeah, I don't know where the
Can they
webcam has
see us?
disappeared to.
Don't see it. Upper hand.
I can do chicken impressions.
Please do. Just for the crowd.
Okay.
I forgot how good you are at that.
I can do. A,
Oh, we should
I
probably.
could do an Ava impression,
We might need the
but-
Wi-Fi for this one.
Yeah, you need to. If do you have access to the Wi-Fi here?
Wi-Fi.
I need the Wi-Fi password. What's the Wi-Fi password?
Don't tell it.
Here.
Oh wait.
Tell the entirety of Twitch.
Tweet, tweet, tweet.
Tell the
tweet.
entirety of the
Hey
two
Ben,
people
what's
that
your
are watching
password?
this.
Can you say it really loud for the crowd?
No.
Your Twitch username is
So
Ben.
into-
Do you
Like
want
that
another
fire
chicken impression?
What?
Do you want another chicken impression? I can also do an elephant. But I have fangs and I'll take them out. Yes, I am the plaid shirted fang girl.
That's amazing.
I should have done
My
it
throat
correctly.
hurts.
Oh nope.
What? I should just whistle.
Sorry, it keeps making my throat hurt, so I was doing it.
Yeah, I am.
There's someone who's possessed by an owl.
Yeah, that's me, the plaid shirted girl,
Woo.
person, child.
Ooh, ooh.
Wait, is it the whistling or is it something else?
It's a joke. Whoever says who is the one.
Who? You see, I'm a problem.
You just fell for the up dog joke, but in owl form. Not gonna lie.
There, we've got a full
Oh, they
cam
can
bar.
Hey, up dog.
I'm gonna do an elephant.
Oh my god.
That didn't really work.
Hey! I'm not in frame. Hi, guys.
All right.
I'll scooch over. Ow, I hurt my foot.
I hate my life.
This is
What?
a
That's a
wheelchair.
different issue.
Yeah, scoot over a little, Anna.
I'm
There, that's good.
That's a very tiny little thing.
Entertainment.
I like the.
This is how.
I know a good dad joke. I forget it though.
How many tickles does it take to make an octopus laugh?
Dad, I'm hungry. Hi,
10
hungry. I'm
tickles.
Dad. Why did you name me this way? Why?
All right, I'm getting it ready. Where? There it is.
Do-do-do-do-do.
Dad jokes, yes.
Swine.
You are so lucky I'm a good catch.
Oh, that's not.
Did you not see this here?
Huh, what?
Ah! She threw.
Stop scaring me.
Okay, but she threw this, and it was right here, and I caught it. You're freaking welcome.
Can they see us?
Yes, they can.
I also wasn't
Or
paying
right in
attention
the
at
bottom.
all.
Oh, jeez. That-
Oh.
They can see us.
Yes, and they can hear us.
And they can hear us.
Oh, no.
Batman!
All right, I don't know how long this is going to be, so
Stop touching my head.
Copyrighted music.
I'm not copyrighting music. Copyright, music. I did it.
How you doing, Dad? You might know me as Nail Guy or Nail Guy.
and I'm the plague doctor, of course.
I had to finish it. Also, my hands are really sweaty and getting all over the phone.
Boots
Hi.
and cats and boots and cats and boots and cats and
She sells seashells by the seashore.
No, it's down by the seashore. You
Seashell,
uncultured
down by the
swine.
seashore. Seashell.
Wow.
Congrats.
Seashell, down by the seashore. Seashell.
She sells seashores. She's a real
The whole
estate
game.
dealer.
Okay, I'm trying to do this again.
Fill the silence.
What?
Sorry.
You're
You're welcome.
Copyright.
Oh, webcam's dead again, so that's great. Actually.
Crack, you giant. Crack.
Let it go. Let it go.
No. No more than 2 seconds.
Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. Let go of it. Let go of it. Never bothered
Let go of
me
it.
anyway.
It's on nothing.
Please help me. Jackbox. Hard pack. Hard pack. Jack.
Wait, what are you
Jack
doing?
Bros.
Still don't know what we're doing. Your phone turned off.
I'll unlock it.
I don't know. I still don't know.
I think Jackbox is one word.
I can't see anything on your phone. Probably because the phone. I thought, but yeah.
No!
Stop
Stop it! Stop it right now!
Copyright! Copyright.
Stop.
Them splits a real thing, bro.
I can do this one.
Just type in Jackbox. Like, scribble it.
Do the split.
Oh yeah, also, you're in all of the copyright strikes now.
Yeah, I know.
I hope you realize.
Disney's gonna be at you for that Let It Go cover.
Don't worry.
Alright, if you're going to sing, you have to do it so badly that nobody knows what you're singing, so that the algorithm can
Let
catch
it go!
Wait,
let it
Oh,
go!
Why couldn't the bicycle stand up by itself? It was too tired.
funny.
What? Why didn't the bicycle stand up? Ah! Sorry, I actually really found that funny.
Can I close your door?
Sure.
Can you give me another dad joke?
I have a leg.
Jeremy has nitro.
And he's one of the DGT judges.
What?
Oh,
What's
cool.
a DGT barbecue?
Don't worry.
Discord.
Discord's Got Talent, yes.
Yeah.
It's like America's Got Talent or Britain's Got Talent, but
Except it's Discord.
yeah, it's Discord.
Comment
Now,
why though?
who would like to die?
I'm
I
coming.
Pete?
would
Commit
very
Pete.
much so
Commit-
die.
Oh,
Honey,
my
I have. Guilty as charged.
What?
When are we supposed to be doing something?
Yeah,
not
we're
okay.
waiting. It's downloading.
Ah.
It's at
Don't.
90%.
Loading. What
Why
is
don't you
it?
just like put on the screen the bar of downloading? So
Isn't
they
it
can
only
watch it
copyright if
downloaded?
you
They
actually?
can't. See,
Wait,
they can't.
wait. Is it only copyright when you like actually play the song? It's fine if you actually sing it.
I
No.
think you can go up
It's
to at
not
least
fine
5
if
seconds.
you sing it. That's not
I
fun.
think you can go up to at most like 5 to 8 seconds
That's-
before you get copyright.
Got his.
It's not
Did
stupid.
it, did
It's
it,
just
did.
don't
He's a neighbor, it's
steal other people's stuff and
Violence.
you will be fine.
Well, look, I didn't even sing 8 seconds. Did it, did it.
Cough.
Yes.
Why can't
Make
a
sure you don't hit
nose be 12
cumulative
inches long?
8
Because
seconds
then
or
it'll
you're
be a
gonna get
foot.
bonk.
Ha ha.
Why can't a nose be 12 inches long? Because then it would be a foot.
That's great.
96%, 97%, 97.
Percent still. Look at that. Sick 0 byte per second.
What?
I love 0 bytes per second.
98%.
Loading. I put your phone on this. Loading.
Oh, it's done.
It's done.
Wait.
You just farted.
Ow.
What the heck?
Welcome to the Jackbox Party Pack.
Is it on the stream?
I'm concerned.
Yes.
Y'all can see it, right?
Yes, they can see it. If I just go over here, look. Alright. We never got this one to work.
Go.
Alright, so do you guys want to do this one?
No.
No?
I
Okay.
don't know what we're doing, so I don't care.
How about this
Fibbage
one?
is a cool one.
The hilarious bluff
Oh,
and
it
cardigan.
stinks now.
Fool your friends with your lies, avoid theirs, and find the usually outrageous truth. The mayor of Rabbit Hash, Kentucky, is a
Blank. Yeah, so basically it asks you a question, you have to give the answer you believe it is.
Okay.
Alright,
sure.
next one is the lie swatter.
Lobsters pee out of their heads. Did Japan vote the instant noodle to the top invention of the 20th century?
I should
Are you-
also
or are you
mention
calling
that we're not
yes?
going to be the only ones playing.
Oh,
Anybody in my chat will be able to join as well. Look, 1 to 100 players.
That's brown and stickiest.
No, there. Alright, word spud.
No, you're wrong. It's poop.
keep the words rolling all night. Must just finish the word coming towards you, like male. Male enhancement, you say. You nailed it.
no.
What?
I'd say let's do lie swatter or drawful.
Drawful?
You basically.
What the heck did you draw
Why?
by the game?
What? Why does
You
there?
draw
why
something
did
and
the
then
owl
other
have
people
to
say
cut
what
that
they
off?
think it is.
Sure.
And then you have to pick of the things that people said they thought it was.
You want to
Okay.
join, Kelly?
Sure.
No?
Come out again.
I'm just gonna watch.
ASMR.
What's brown and sticky? A stick.
No, it's poop.
No, it's a stick. It's stick.
It's a turd.
Alright, so what do you guys want to do?
That's too much.
Let's start with fibbage.
Fibbage? Alright.
Wow.
Alright, let me unlock the phones.
Cool.
Alright, here's.
I kind of just want to react.
Here you
Enter
go.
want
If
to
you don't want to
react.
play, then you
I
gotta
want-
get out of the seat.
I want to react.
You gotta get out of the seat then.
Jeremy has Nitro wants to call you on Discord.
Uh,
I
don't
want
matter.
to. Okay, what do I do?
Alright, you have to
I
move
want
out
to
of the seat.
react though.
You can watch.
Alright, anybody in the chat, join now.
How do we
Pens.
join?
Pens.
So
React.
hold on.
Yeah.
Let me help.
We need help.
Ben, can I call you on Discord? In my opinion, it's easier to talk that way. Wait for me. Can't join because military man on Roblox. Oh, alright.
Cool.
It next to the mic.
No.
ASMR time.
Your window looks like it has eyes on it because it's stained.
I know, I keep seeing that.
Oh yeah, that's because of
Why?
the fan.
Fan?
Alright,
How does a fan do that? I don't understand physics.
Assuming it pushes the...
yeah, the dust. GKJB. Jeremy's here!
Yay,
So there's someone
Jeremy!
named Pens and someone named Jeremy?
Yeah, I think your pens? Yes.
Yes, I am Pens.
Alright, I'm trying to connect as well.
How the heck do you? I'm Professor.
It's a puzzle box.
I don't think it's actually supposed to open. Are you sure that thing is supposed to open, Ben?
Yes, it is. I've opened
I've
it.
done it before because you showed me. But can I see? Wait, can I see? Let me
Okay,
see.
GKJB.
Let me see. I don't remember, so I need to see it.
I have a rock.
Why do you have a rock?
I don't know. Yeah, why is there
You
a
just
rock?
hear a loud
Oh
crash.
no, you're bright. Why is there such a bright light?
Jackbox.tv. That is correct.
Indeed.
Flat. Okay, so GK.
No, you go to Jackbox TV and then you type it into the little box.
Oh. Right.
I like this music.
I thought there was something weird.
I like this music. It's interesting.
Oh yeah.
Yep, I'm here.
Hello.
H-E-L-L-O- X.
Oh, James is here as well.
James,
James,
Jeremy,
what's
hello.
Also, how do you enter the...
Hello.
These two try.
Oh, right. What?
Oh, I didn't force it because I didn't want to just crush your wooden box.
Would you like to buy a suitcase thingamajiggy? If so, it's $29.99. Do you want this?
$29.99?
Yes.
I want you to calm down, child.
I'm not calm. I'm calm.
Alright, here you go, Anna.
Yay! Now what do I do?
Now you just have to enter in the code that's on screen there. In fact, I'm just gonna put it right here, so...
Are you allowed to say tit if it's in the context of the bird? I mean, we could just have a stream where we tell people all about the illustrious tit and all of its wonderful facts.
Alright. Did it.
Stop it.
Why?
Please stop.
Alright, hold on. I'm just gonna quickly do this. Lights off. Other lights off.
Alright, welcome to the box unboxing, where we unbox boxes and then rebox the boxes so that we can unbox them again at a later date.
What's in it?
It's some plastic gem things.
Alright, are you good? We need you to enter, Anna.
I'm sorry, I'm working on it.
Nah.
I love how light water can have up to 100 people.
That is a lot of people.
What?
Couch
Oh.
stain.
Alright, I think that's everybody here.
Who is couch stain?
Me!
Who?
What's favorite you got?
It's where there's one true answer, but then you try
Yes,
to
yes,
lie.
yes.
Go to that next week.
Oh, wait. Hold on.
5 players. I hope you don't mind me fantasizing that you're my entourage. Let's do this. This is round 1. You'll get 500 points for everyone you fool, and you'll get 1,000 for finding the truth. Select a category.
James.
James. He is having a throw moment.
Jay.
Okay, here's your first question. Gloucestershire, England is home to the Cotswold Olympics, the highlight of which is the traditional blank kicking competition. Now use your device to type a lie that might fool the other players into believing it. If you get stuck, for half the points you can use the help button and get a suggestion. Do it now.
Nope. Stop it right there. No more. We're not allowed to do it.
Hurry, hit the lie for me button if you can't think of something.
Who's the one who's not responding? I think
I
it's
think
James.
that's James.
James, you've got like 0 seconds.
James is in another time zone right now.
All eyes on you.
Okay, there are your choices. Find the truth and enter it on your device by touching the answer you want.
Oh yeah, you can also go to James. James, where are you? At the Cotswold Olympics.
Well, then it's fine.
I don't think it's the actual Olympics. James, where are you? Oh.
Let's see what everybody selected.
How dare you? It was a good lie, though. I will say. Yeah!
Oh, well
Great
done!
lie there.
What's that?
And look what we have here.
Shit kicking.
Really?
That's
I
not
love
okay.
that.
That's-
I'm so sad no choose sausage.
I love how everybody chose watermelon. My watermelon.
How do you?
Yeah, look at that. Woo!
How do you? Okay.
If the screen starts going dark.
Time to pick a category.
Couch is stained. Couch stained.
I have candy now.
Okay.
Okay, here's the question. The real name of the internet's famous grumpy cat is blank.
Oh
Type in your
no.
lies now.
I don't know.
I don't know either. I know. I think.
Why don't we just Google it?
Yeah, just
Just keep on screen.
I have my phone too. Sorry.
I don't know. I chose.
James, where are you?
Just-
Did you
James,
die?
James, why are you?
Hopefully these Smarties make me smarter. I have bad grades.
All lies entered.
Alright, where's the truth?
Darth Meow. Tartar sauce.
I'm pretty sure I know which one it is. Or what his name is.
You misspelled tartar sauce, by the way.
However, I know what it is, I'm pretty sure.
I love how
I
love how Jeremy is actually here, but James just disappeared.
I assume it's one of the
James
bottom
is
three.
having a bromo
That's
right
not
now.
good. Okay, what did everyone pick?
Ah,
I will.
God.
got him.
Everyone else chose Murphy.
Oh,
What the hell is his name?
Jeremy.
Jeremy,
Nice
God.
Jeremy and
lie.
I are now tied for the lead.
Well, don't you feel foolish?
Wait! Misspelled tartar sauce!
Thank
But
you,
the
The
Weeks.
answer is misspelled tartar
And
sauce.
that means
Yes, that's probably the actual
Really?
name.
Are you serious?
The name
Is it?
Who names their cat tartar sauce
Why?
and doesn't spell
I'll look
tartar
it up.
sauce
I'll look it
right?
up on the other screen.
I told you, if it starts
I
with
All right,
can't
pick
pay
a
attention
category.
the whole time.
Jeremy! Wait a second, what happened to the chat?
No, that's okay, I've got it.
Johnny Depp.
Okay, here's the
Control.
question.
Cat.
Johnny
Control
Depp
F.
was
Control
made an
F.
honorary member of the Comanche
Above
Nation
jump.
and given a descriptive
That's
Comanche
shit.
name.
That's
His
fair.
Comanche name,
Fair.
Mawu May, means blank.
Oh,
Enter your lies now.
Into your lives.
hold on.
Hurry, hit the lie for me
Hurry!
button if you
Wait,
can't
you
think
got
of
that?
something.
I can't answer right now.
Oh my god,
Sorry,
Jeremy
guys.
actually answered this.
Oh, no, I'm good.
Who?
I'm the one who hasn't answered because I was fixing our green screen. Hey, out of my
Okay, here are
seat.
your
You're not
choices.
playing.
I want to react.
Sad.
You can react.
Darth Vader.
Please be funny, rum guy.
Is that what you put?
You want it to be funny rum guy.
That's screwed.
I want it to be funny rum guy too.
Is it yours?
I don't know.
Pick something.
Shapeshifter makes sense. It's because he's an actor, right?
It probably is funny, young guy.
All right, who picked what?
Mawu May!
Why? He obviously that's a lie. It's like Mawume means Mawume.
That's what he says.
Alright.
Ah.
Oh, don't tell me I actually got it correct. Oh my god!
Wow! Wait, what was it?
This is short for
Why'd you try that
man
with my
who
hand?
shifts into white face makeup
Okay,
time after time. And the rest of the board goes unselected.
I'm not doing very well.
Oh,
Oh yeah, guys, look at that. Up to second.
I'm in first still somehow.
Sad clown. Nice one, Jeremy. I like Jeremy's
And everyone
lies.
heard you for watermelon.
Yes.
This is round two, which means all point values are doubled. Exciting.
I'm not good at this.
Select a category.
Oh.
Pen! Pen! Happy pen!
Okay, here's the question. After an allergic reaction to steroids used to treat asthma, a 28-year-old woman started growing blank on her head instead of hair. Type in your lies now.
Perfect.
Parts on her head. Starts growing fingernails on her head. I don't know.
Boom.
You're a bit of a sibling.
Wait, what?
Hurry up. Use a suggestion if you can't think of anything.
What?
I'm
I
confused.
know nobody's going to choose my lie, but I just
I'm
wanna fix my
confused.
lie.
You might get some bonus points for getting like the
Okay, which one's the truth?
Muscles. It's probably muscles.
Acne, yes. needle skirt.
Muscles, muscles,
Muscles
Hello?
makes sense, crap.
muscles.
Alright, let's see what
James
everybody
back?
picked.
Yeah, he has a black eye.
Oh, thank you, James. Oh, I got 1,000 for that. Oh.
Our
Oh!
lie.
Oh, I just lost 1,000.
Why would it be you?
What? How many of the fake lies are there?
Acne, it can't be. The actual one
And it was
was.
also
It's totally gonna be muscles.
Wait, we essentially need you. Oh my god, how many people said acne?
You and
well,
Jeremy.
you guys blew it.
Oh, you guys would.
Wow.
My fingernails. I was right.
Now when she wants to look
I-
nice,
I
she goes
said
out and
that
gets a
first.
mani-pedi.
I was saying
And nobody
muscles.
fell
This
for
was
this
my
one.
lie. Because it made sense. Because it's
No, it didn't.
muscles.
Wow, guys.
But yeah, obviously not. It's anything just hair, so I have no problem.
It's not really fingernails if it's on your head, then it's head nails.
I mean, it's all dead skin.
I'm taking one.
That's
Okay,
right.
here's the question. In 2004, the CEO of Blockbuster mailed Reed Hastings, the CEO of Netflix, an odd package. He sent him a blank. Enter your lies now.
Such
I
a
have to
package.
take a card because you have like 20 of
James better be here again.
James.
James!
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 Bite you! James!
You three are
Hurry,
even
hit the
playing.
live stream button if you can't think of something.
What happens if everybody in the game gets negative points?
Okay, here you go.
if you
Find
saw,
the
I didn't
truth.
actually lose any points.
He said
Oh my god!
NSFE. It's NSFE. The E's supposed to be a W.
Not safe for internet.
I love
that I know that it isn't.
Okay, let's take a look.
Okay.
A pair, yes.
I didn't know what to do.
Why the heck would be a
Yeah.
pear?
Well, why not? Well, you are so
Do you know
immature.
what it? So you know what to do? Out of all the things you know to do,
Yes.
Yeah!
do you know what
We
hentai
did
is?
it!
No.
And that's
You
it.
told me not to
Nobody
search
else's
it
lies
up.
That's
yet.
one of his videos I was in. Someone asked,
Yeah, you told
Something
me not
about
to search
hentai.
it up.
yeah,
No!
your parents.
Yeah!
No!
Heavens
This
for the
can't be
win!
happening!
I did it! Oh, look at how
I'm
many
at the
likes
bottom,
still, oh
bro.
god! Haha!
Alright, pick a category.
Jeremy! Jeremy!
Okay, here's the question. The city of Olney, Illinois organizes an annual event in order to blank squirrels.
Hell.
Type in your lies.
How many people are watching this?
5 people. And probably
Five
Jeremy on and probably Jeremy on YouTube.
I bet you're all amazing.
Hurry up, use a suggestion if you can't think of anything.
James, where are you?
Gone forever.
Wait, when does the 3rd round start?
Can you hand me yours, sorry?
Okay, here are your choices.
Yeah, you put eat in there.
Here you go. People think
Count.
Save count.
I have a feeling.
I don't know, mate.
It's probably that.
God damn you. No, protect me!
Cursed, bad lady.
I thought you were a child of the Lord. What did I say?
James, where?
James is the dark horse. James is gonna beat all of us,
I
despite
forgot
not
that I'm
even
not
being.
Okay, what did everyone pick?
Just use the bottle.
I didn't know.
Yeah,
Oh,
just imagine if that was the truth.
The bottom of my shirt.
Yeah, it's probably the truth.
thank you, Jeremy. Thank you. It's counted.
Yeah!
Hell yeah!
Just
It's
ran
important
out.
to count those who
Anna!
cannot count themselves.
Remember,
Yeah.
we have to pretend that
And
we're
say,
actually
yeah.
being heck
Just
whenever we
read
say heck.
Just randomly count squirrels. So count squirrels. Oh my god.
You're at 7,000.
Indeed, I am.
Grand final finish.
The final fibbage. Just one final question, and it's worth triple.
They're
Good luck.
disgusting.
Here's your final fibbage question. Wilma Flintstone's maiden name.
Who the heck
Enter
even
your
is that?
lies now.
I don't know.
Wait.
Butt face. I have a hack to this game. Oh no, that's my chicken.
I pulled something out of
No,
Hurry,
nowhere.
hit
I
the
know.
lie for me
the
button
most-
if
I
you
know
can't think
a way
of
that you
something.
can, like,
James, where are you?
James.
This mask is getting
3,
very
2,
uncomfortable.
1.
Milk my dudes.
James.
All right, where's the truth?
I did.
Dealmaker, probably slag.
I just don't
I
care.
love slag.
Hey Ben,
What?
it's milk my dudes.
Milk.
Indeed.
That was your best one.
That was actually great.
I saw milk on top of Look.
Don't worry, guys.
Wait,
Let's
James
see
is
what
here
everybody
again.
selected.
Smith.
I love that he showed up so
Slag
loud.
of
Wow.
Why did you say Milwa? That
I
was
don't care. I couldn't think. Oh.
Do I Smith as a first name?
No, like,
Oh.
First.
take one letter away from me.
Probably actually Stonehead. Oh, God.
So is it Wilming?
Oh,
Flag.
flag hoople.
Flag.
Oh my god!
Yeah, sure.
I don't even
Tells
care.
you information
I don't
being
even
compressed.
care that nobody got that right. That's
Wilma
beautiful.
slag
Flintstone.
hoople.
No,
One
it's Slag
lonely,
Hoople
pitiful
Flintstone.
lie.
Oh my god. Final
You
score.
won.
I lost. I'm 1,000.
At 10,000.
10,000. Yes! I have done it! I win forever!
Thumbs up.
Yeah, I got the thumbs cup too.
Thumbs up.
Alright, well. Back to pack. No, somebody hit continue.
Welcome
Please.
to the game. I'm your host, Cookie, and I'm the
Game.
not strong, not
Continue. Hi.
No, it was free.
Alright, we're going to go play
I
Drawful.
could touch the ceiling.
Thank you.
Log in to play.
Okay, that's fine.
I went drawful.
I love being couched in.
drawful.
Can we play double?
Drawful. Why does the owl have a coconut bra? Why does the owl have a
I
coconut
thought it did.
I like my chair crying out, and you're going to rip that down again.
I haven't even written this down.
I know.
It's couch stick.
I love how you
Couch.
didn't notice what I did. I licked you. And you just didn't notice.
I live with an autistic brother. There's nothing
Did
we
you
can
know
do.
if you touched him?
Where's the thing to sign in?
Or no? Because you
It says
It's at the top.
NITU.
Wait, what is it? Oh,
NITU.
Hey!
knit you. I will knit you a sweater.
Avatar. Okay, now you have to draw what your avatar is.
Ooh, I want to draw it. No, wait, I have to be No. How do you make a couch stain? It's a stain. It's the same as any other stain.
I don't know how to draw.
No, it isn't. A couch stain is very distinct from.
Really?
Which
Is it
one
from
of
your
you is
butt?
the
Like,
Uno reverse card?
No, you.
Alright. JC. Oh, hey, JC's here.
I
Wait,
said I'm
JC's
not being
here?
racist.
Oh, hey, JC, you're
Oh, I
back?
like you
Awesome.
so much, Anna.
Thank you.
All right,
Not to be
wait.
gender racist or anything, but what is milk?
Not. Wait, that's. What?
Not to be gender racist or anything. but
Hello
what-
there.
That's not a
This is
thing.
Rob.
Wait, who hit?
It looks
who
like
hit
we
start?
have five excellent artists playing, so I'm going to give you each 2 chances
I
to
don't
draw
know.
this
I know.
game. Let's
JC.
do this thing.
I know JC, guys.
Okay, I'm sending a title to each of your devices. Something kind of strange, like pickpocket or magic smell. Draw a picture on your device that would have that title, and when you're done, hit send. And you'll get points for each player that can correctly guess your title. So, start drawing. Go, now! pictures. Now it's time to share.
I'm not allowed to sit in the chair.
Now, use your device to type in what you think the title of this picture could
I don't
be.
know.
Or better yet, something you think could trick the other players into thinking it's the title. You'll get points for every player that picks your answer.
Does that say hippo?
Anna.
You forgot an M. Whoever wrote this forgot an M in it. It's just. This is so freaking good.
Alright, here are your choices. Now pick the title you think really inspired this drawing.
Cliff diving.
Cliff diving is the best one.
Demonetized.
That is jumping off a cliff.
Alright,
Randomly
what?
singing.
Yeah! No, yeah!
Yeah!
Sorry to
Got
be
him.
falling out of love.
You're
I'm
almost
just
singing
been
the face of your
going
elbow.
through some stuff.
Get out of here, old woman. Get out.
I don't know.
Look at that. You actually got some points.
I know, right?
Let's do this.
Oh my
Okay,
god.
let's do this again. Enter anything that could
What
also
the hell?
make sense now.
Oh, I guess it was
You mean
What?
it?
Wait, what?
But that does not look like it's
Ba-ba-ba.
Ba-da-ba, ba-da-ba. Oh, yeah, I can see
Is that
And here are your choices.
broken legs? Chess.
I just want to remind you all they can see us still.
Good.
Yes.
Someone's
I
up
want them
the floor
to
and
look
pulling
me in
it
the
off.
Here's
eyes.
everybody's picks.
Look me in the eyes.
Kelly.
She's not here.
Wow.
She ran away.
Kelly, do you want to?
Wow.
I'm not sure how to feel about all of you.
Noise.
Noise.
Talking was not clear with the chairs and things, guys. Simple, like a heart, and a person falling.
That was an interview.
Jousting.
A new job. You can go to an interview.
Is anyone still watching?
It is a sword.
What is it? It's, I don't even. Oh, wait.
It's okay, you look good.
Bye.
I don't know, we'll see.
Stay.
Bye.
Bye, Kelly.
Okay, here are your choices.
Whoa. Whoa. Whoa.
Execution.
Not
crotch,
okay.
straight to the crotch.
Not
Execution
okay.
is obviously straight to the crotch.
I don't know.
Assault.
What did everybody pick?
You guys are good at me. Didn't even
Love
spell
moist
assault
bread.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we are done with this one.
Didn't make sense. Needle to the crotch does not make sense. Assault.
I'm sorry, I spelled it wrong, so sorry.
Oh, you're still winning somehow, even by spelling assault wrong?
No.
Now let's take a look at this one.
What's
Oh, crap, then.
Bucket of beer.
It's a hydro very good, but I forgot.
And I
Enter a title.
It's someone with a hydro flask.
bald man.
I'm sorry.
I accidentally hit enter and it said you can't enter.
Oh, yes.
You can't enter a
That is moist round if I've ever seen it.
What are your choices?
Don't remind me of Moist Ralph.
That's a belly button.
None of these make sense.
I know that's not the right one, but I really hope that's what it is.
If it's not
I'm concerned.
And here are your picks.
I'm very concerned.
I couldn't
Are you impressed by my ability to spell connoisseur? I did not use spell check. I did not use
You
spell
most
check.
definitely used
I did not use spell
We all
check.
know you used spell check.
I did not use spell check.
Was it casual drinker?
Yes.
Oh my god!
You weren't even.
Let's go, broskies.
Type in a
No,
convincing title
It's
now.
What?
It's a zigzag.
Like
Zigzag.
Hey!
Hey!
adios.
Zigzag. Achoo!
And here are your choices.
What?
Zeus.
Witch with no money. I know how to draw Zeus.
That's good.
Why does which with no money does
I love Cliff. I love Witch with the money. I'm just
Giant tree.
Here's everybody's picks.
Listen, okay. You deserved anything from that. Also, you did mine too.
It was
Zeus.
what?
What?
doesn't make any sense.
You're all
What?
wrong.
Okay, so whoever was
Everybody's
drawing
wrong.
I was correct. You were all wrong.
I think this is JC. Yeah, oh yeah, it was JC. It was JC who wrote this.
You say darn in this Christian household?
Look, 6,000, 5,000, 5,000.
Okay, I'm sending out another round of titles for everybody to draw.
Here's the mushroom.
Ah!
I'm magical enough to cause notice.
Bye.
Yep.
Don't you look at my screen, you cheater.
I can't see anything.
Hey!
Not your hydro flask.
It's a thermal flask.
Hello.
How's it going?
So
Doing
fine.
well.
Pictures are in.
How are you?
Oh.
Are those actual
in your
glasses
titles
or
now.
costumes?
What is it?
Hey Anna, do you need a ride home?
Oh.
I don't know. Has my dad ever arrived?
Your dad was here. I think he took Mac home like hours ago. But what I was saying is, we can.
Okay,
Well, we can
here
either
are your
ride from the
choices.
bottom of the driveway to your house.
Okay, who?
If you'd like,
What?
we go.
You guys did the exact same answers you did last time I drew.
I sold.
You still haven't spelled the salt right.
Actually, I did assault last time and I didn't do it this time, so.
That's
I know.
That's
Ah.
how you?
So.
We put the same thing.
You both spelled the salt in the exact same way.
What?
Are
That
you
makes no
kidding?
sense.
Because he's hugging the guy but stabbing him at the same time.
That makes no sense.
That was like
not
it's
clear.
That was not clear.
You should have just
Well,
done I hate
you,
you.
all
I
of you
love
voted for assault spelled wrong.
I don't think that's spelled wrong.
Yes, it is.
I don't know. I just chose
That's
this.
so.
Frenemy didn't make
And
sense.
now, this
You
thing.
Oh, it's we put the A and U should be switched around. That's it.
Hey!
You have no idea how much I hated doing it. The
Here are your
Birdman. Yes,
choices.
hello. Hello, Rob the expert.
We haven't looked at the chat in forever.
Hey!
I will reply.
No,
to the
I
chat.
watch it.
I will reply to the chat.
Okay, who's flexing with the
Pimple
Pepe
baby.
All right.
Random decoy.
I knew it.
Where are
One of you
nipples
got
in
that.
this? That's
I
the nipple.
expected more from you.
That's the hair.
I didn't know what to draw.
That's so bad.
I didn't know what to do. Okay.
Sometimes I'm very good at paying attention, and sometimes I'm just not.
Type in your titles
What
now.
is it?
I don't know. A dude dropping stuff. Someone dropping stuff.
blah 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 blah. Blah 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 blah.
Black.
Oh,
Hey, chat, you want to see a cool box?
And here are your choices.
Sad baby.
Waterman.
That's probably
Dead baby. Jesus.
I like death.
I think it's waterman or blood. I think it's blood. Because I think he's like bleeding for some reason. Hey!
Yeah, you can
Pick something.
No, you get one color and you get it once. I don't know what I just said.
You only get one shot.
So I think the water is coming from the fact that it's blue. But
Here's everybody's picks.
Waterman!
Thanks, Jeremy.
I knew it wasn't
I couldn't think of that.
It's blood.
That was weird. Oh!
Actually, it's blood.
Alright,
Wait, you
we're
didn't
done
choose,
with
did
that
you?
now.
I'm trying.
Aw, nobody voted for Dead Baby. Too bad. Yeah, I'm a horrible person.
I'm now in second, tied with Jeremy.
Enter your titles
It's a
now.
giraffe. It's
It's a jiggy rat.
Quickly, everybody type in giraffe. We just have 5 different giraffes to choose from.
oh my god, that's a unique name.
I know.
Alright, we all type in giraffe and we all answer giraffe.
Wait, which giraffe would it be though?
Okay, here are your
We all
choices.
get giraffe.
hey.
Friendly graffiti. Sideways.
Wait, sideways? What's
And
that?
Snake in a boot! Snake in a boot! Snake in a boot!
Ah,
Damn it, you should have done giraffes.
And couch stay.
It's snake in the boot! I know it's snake in the
Everybody
boot.
types in giraffe.
Snake in the boot! Snake in the boot! Snake in the boot! Snake in the boot!
Thank you.
What?
Darn.
Snake in the boot!
It's sideways. It's friendly graffiti.
What?
What the heck?
Everybody was just way off on this one.
Yeah, no doubt.
And I have to do the
But
loner.
how is that friendly graffiti? Or
I don't know
how is
either.
it? I don't know what it is.
It's Jason's fault.
I want to draw something.
Oh look, I'm now in second. But JC's still in fifth, even though he got
And
the
this
most
one.
points.
Oh!
That was
Wait a
Oh.
okay. I can tell this is good. I managed to figure it's blood. And I have to be the loner. I
Here
don't
are
know.
your choices.
A salt.
Aso,
Brave
Brave
Ant.
Ant, Child Abuse.
Holy crap!
It looks like child abuse. I'm sorry.
What
I
did
don't
everybody
think
pick?
mine's right, but I hope it is.
Yeah!
Yeah!
My nose stinks and I don't know why.
I didn't know. Oh, wow!
Yeah!
Good
Oh,
stuff.
The reason is
Good
I put ants in there, so it's like, oh, maybe that's what's actually supposed to be when it says gray man.
Oh, you can score. You can score. I won!
But your reverse card, so that means you lose.
Oh, look, we got the best one.
Tied for life.
Woo! No.
I want to draw something.
Okay, we're switching to another game.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to try it. We're going to try doing You Don't Know Jack. There's only 4 spots though, so get ready.
I'm playing. I'm not ready.
I'm done. I'll see y'all later. Well, I'll probably come back.
It turned off.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Cookie, I took a poll in the office and we all thought that Gravity was worth seeing in the theater.
Okay, agree to disagree. I thought it was way better on my iPod shelf.
What the? Okay, who pressed the button? Who pressed the buttons? Don't press the buttons, please. I know you didn't press it. Somebody in chat did.
We are on!
CMTS.
Hello? Hello?
Doesn't matter. It's still capitalized for you.
I can hear myself. I don't think there's words.
Wait, I wanted to change my name.
Everybody thinks they're doing a good job. Just
Okay.
Wait.
I think at
This
this
is
might be
Unit
the
of
first
Jack
time we get to work.
2015. I'm your host, Cookie Masterson. And hey, wipe that smile off your face. This is serious.
I do not have a smile. I'm a blank doctor.
Okay, just kidding. There will be farts and stuff. I'm flattered you four decided to play our little game, but really, get a life. You all take care of those screws now. If you think another player is clueless, screw them and make them answer immediately. If they miss it,
So
you
wait,
win
that's
extra
where this term
cash.
comes from?
And our wrong answer of the game is sponsored by
The San Francisco Honor Choir. Free concerts every Wednesday, except for dating season.
Sniff out our sponsor's wrong answer of the game and you'll end up with a great prize and serious cash. Okay, let's get this show on the road. Get ready, time for question.
Cool.
First question, Bootyful. Let's analyze one of Kim Kardashian's body parts. About what percentage of Kim Kardashian's brain is just made up of water? 10%, 40%, 80%, or 100%?
I don't know either, but
I don't know.
Player 1. Ooh, ouch. Player 2. Interesting choice. Players 3 and 4. Kim Kardashian's brain, and everybody else's brain for that matter, is made up of about 80% water.
Oh, wow.
But that other 20% is just so round and firm, I can't stop thinking about it.
Oh,
Up
yeah.
next, his acting is alright.
You know
So,
science.
you know how they called Matthew McConaughey's resurgence as an actor his reconnaissance? Well, if Matthew McConaughey is currently experiencing a reconnaissance, then what period of his life just ended? The McCona Dark Ages, the McCona Industrial Age, the McCona Middle Ages, or the McCona Enlightenment Age? Watch the clock.
You gotta answer quick.
I don't know. I'll just pick
Player
one.
4?
I don't know. I just
How do you say, no? Player 1. All wrong. Player
Right,
3.
it was the Middle
The
Ages.
Renaissance first occurred in Italy in the late 14th century, immediately following the Middle Ages. So the McConaissance would follow the McCona Middle Ages. Which is funny because most Renaissance sculptures also need to put on a damn shirt.
Ah, we're playing with chat.
And on its way, brought to you by the letter U,
Get any
Nibrow.
closer, you're gonna be. Your face is gonna be. Yeah, it depends on if you want your face to be on the internet.
And if you get this one right, I'll rustle up some extra moolah for you. Arrange these Sesame Street characters in order of fewest to most eyebrows. Bert, Ernie, the Count. Ernie, Bert, the Count. Bert, Ernie, the Count. The Count, Bert, Ernie, or Ernie, the Count, Bert.
You gotta pick one. If you want to, you can screw somebody.
Player 4, how about it? Player 3. Player 4. Players 1 and 2. Ernie has no eyebrows at all. Bert has one long single eyebrow. And the Count has two. 2 eyebrows. That got you each an extra $1,000. And
Hey,
yes,
I'm out of
none
the
them are
negatives.
perfect. Why not try Duck Duck Swan? Say the cast of Duck Dynasty attends a performance of Swan Lake and thinks there are real waterfowl on stage. In their confusion, which character would they most likely shoot? Siegfried, Benno, Von Rothbart, or Odette? Player 1, who's gonna get it? Player 4, you are so screwed! You got 5 seconds! That's all she wrote. Player 1, your screw worked out.
Yeah!
You want even more cash?
It's good. I don't know. Get it? I don't know either, so I just took a guess. Just press 1.
Player 2. Players 1 and 3. Cue the swan song. Here's what a right answer looks like. Odette is a princess who has been turned into a swan, so the Duck Dynasty crew would probably fill her full of lead. Especially if they find out she once fooled around with a lady swan in college.
Nice.
I call this one The Man in the Backwards Yellow Hat.
Oh,
and it's
Curious
this or
George.
that.
Curious George, that's it.
Player 4. Your score stinks at the moment, so this one's all for you. I'm going to read off 7 things, and for each one you tell me if it's an alleged antic by pop star Justin Bieber, or an antic by the classic children's book character Curious George. If it's Justin Bieber, press the X button. If it's Curious George, press the B button. Now, the rest of you need to hear this.
Hello.
Lock in your answers before player 4 does, because if player 4 gets it wrong, everyone who got it right will split that cash. We good? Here we go. Broke his leg.
I don't know, he's just damaged.
Forget George, I'm curious how someone could do this badly. I think we can all agree that it's time for that little bastard to get deported. Then it's your turn, Bieber. Round 1 is complete, and player 4 is in the lead, at least for the moment. Don't forget, all the questions in round 2 are worth double. And keep in mind, the wrong answer of the game is still there for the taking. It's time. Bucker up for Dumber and Dumberer 2. So there's Dumb and Dumber, and then there was Dumb and Dumberer, and then Dumb and Dumber 2. Makes perfect sense. Now, going back a few decades, there was The Odd Couple and The Odd Couple 2. So, if another remake of The Odd Couple used the superlative adjective, it would be called The Blank Couple. Odd, odder, oddest, or odderest.
Go ahead. You 3 still have your screws left, I should not mention.
Players 2, 3, and 4. And that's just the dumberest answer I ever heard. Player 1. Odd is the adjective, odder is the comparative adjective, and oddest is the superlative adjective.
Oh, sweet!
Of course, everyone who made the original Odd Couple movies is dead, which means it's the perfect time for Rob Schneider to swoop in and revitalize the franchise. Question 7. Let's try. Let it go. Let it go. Let it go.
You just want to play
At
Roblox,
which
huh?
temperature would Olaf from the movie Frozen melt and die?
Oh.
30 degrees Kelvin, 30 degrees Fahrenheit, 30 degrees Celsius. Oh, player 3, who's getting the screw job?
It's gonna be me.
You yanked out your screw, you got us all excited, and then you just sat there. Lame.
Oh!
Okay, can we try this again, please?
I know it. I know it. It's so easy.
Player 1. You may not know how temperatures work. Player 2, 30 degrees is below freezing in Fahrenheit and insanely below freezing in Kelvin and Rankine. But it's pretty balmy in Celsius, about the equivalent of 86 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh, wait, no, that's me.
And I know, blah, 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 he can magically be saved, but I'm talking about what would happen in the real world to a talking snowman.
You're back from Roblox and past the military level. Alright, nice.
May I introduce Kangaroo, Peanut, Albert Einstein, or Uranus? Kangaroo, Peanut, Albert Einstein, or Uranus. First spotted in 1879. Kangaroo, Peanuts, Albert Einstein, or Uranus?
Makes sense. Jeremy!
Player 3. Albert Einstein was first spotted in 1879, the year he was born. Probably by a midwife or something, over a century after Uranus was discovered and even longer after kangaroos and peanuts.
Oh, wow.
I've heard baby Einstein cried a lot because he left behind some important equations on the uterine wall. Player 2. Players 1 and 4. That answer has a hole in it. Take a good look at wine or lose. If the Washington Redskins rebranded themselves with a non-offensive red-skinned mascot, what could they be called? The Washington Chardonnays, the Washington Malbecs, the Washington Pinot Blancs, or the Washington Rieslings?
I don't know. It's currently 9 o'clock. Cool.
Player 2, watch the time. Player 2? No. Player 4? Players 1 and 3? Chardonnays, Pinot Blancs, and Rieslings are all white-skinned grapes, but the Malbec grape is red.
Yeah! I'm not
To a connoisseur like myself, Malbec is very offensive.
I'm not a
Yes, ladies, that was
Don't forget, red ball is the Chad! I think this
Say
is the last
hello
one.
to I Want to Lick and Roll All Night. If
Never
Kiss
gonna
singer
give
Gene
you
Simmons'
up,
tongue
never
grew to the
gonna
average
let
length
you
of an
down.
adult giraffe's, how deep into a woman's mouth could he stick it when he kissed her? About 5 inches deep, about 10 inches deep, about 20 inches deep, or about 30 inches deep?
You two still have your screws left. You could screw each other. Never mind.
Player
I'm
2?
probably wrong.
I don't think that's even as long as the tongue he already has. Players 1, 3, and 4? An adult giraffe's tongue is on average about 18 to 20 inches long.
Yeah!
So that's about how deep into a woman's mouth a giraffe-tongued Gene Simmons could stick it.
I'm out of
And
the
if Gene
pot.
Simmons'
Next
neck
this.
grew to the length of an adult giraffe's, he may not even need women anymore.
You can both screw somebody. Just want to remind you, this is the final round, I'm
Brace
pretty
yourself.
sure.
Oh, you know all about the attack.
Oh, wait, you can't screw
Lovely.
anybody
Here's your
anymore.
clue. Your house is made of what? What materials are their houses made from? Good luck.
Oh, I meant to. I saw gingerbread and I was like, that's the correct answer. Oh, it was the first one. Yes! It was the second one, that's right. Third one, the second. Oh yeah, this is easy. This is easy. No. Yeah! He lives in a rock. Patrick and SpongeBob SquarePants.
What is the purple people?
They. Yeah, rock. Adobe. Oh, Adobe. You shouldn't throw stuff. Dang it. I know this one. Yeah, I knew it.
Darn it.
Tested. They throw here and test it.
Oh.
Press A, everybody, spam A.
Clearwood takes it! Okay, player one, you won the game. So what? Big deal. It's a trivia game. Who cares? I mean, honestly, if this is all you've done with your life, then...
Yeah.
You don't know Jack!
Well... right. No. This is the last game. This is going to be the last game until I come back to stream in about 30 minutes. So if you're here in 30 minutes, I will be back to stream.
I'll probably be long gone.
Yes. Alright, so I hope you all enjoyed that part of the stream. I should be streaming later. Anyways, see you.